What is going on, guys? Welcome to this Fruit for Thought podcast, number 8. I'm here with my boy Sarton.
Yeah,
and
he's
we're
here
gonna
as
be going
well.
over the CWC.
Yeah, so
Unfortunately, I'm just kidding.
okay. Well, he's done his first intro. Good job to you, Dolan. You're doing it
Yeah.
fine, dude. As you can see on our channel, we haven't really had any kind of CWC coverage after the round of 16. That's because I was busy myself with the CWC, right? I didn't notice it would be that big of a task to do both this podcast and the CWC at the same time, right? I didn't really keep that in mind while getting to CWC, so I wasn't really able to do jack shit for this podcast, to be fair. But we are back here now, since it's over, and it's gonna be alright. Yeet. I mean, we played pretty well. We got till the top 8, and then I was commentating for most of the finals and the grand final too, so I mean, it was a fun time. We're done now. We're gonna have a little look at our experience of the CWC, talk about the winning teams, and I guess that's just for the recap of the CWC 2017, I guess. I mean, we're not gonna get into every single round particularly anymore. That's too late for that, and that's gonna take way too long to recap all of that, right?
No, let's sit here for an hour and a half. Let's do it.
Yeah, hour and a half. I think you have to triple that, mate. Come on now. Please, have a little look at the length of previous podcasts, man. Those were pretty long too. Hey, Dolan, how did you experience CWC then? Because you were kind of the, well, I'm not going to call you outsider, but you were looking from the sideline, kind of. You weren't really commentating or doing anything. You were just kind of watching all those matches because you were kind of enthusiastic about it. How did you experience it, mate?
Yeah, well, the finals kind of went according to plan for the most part, but the semifinals was really exciting when we saw like the Mexico and you guys, the Netherlands, jump up there and contend. It got really exciting there at the end, and it was kind of really it could have gone either way, where we could have seen Mexico or the Netherlands in finals week, which would have been pretty exciting. But you know, I think for the most part, the top 4, it was kind of upsetting for the USA to not make it to the top 3. I know JD predicted them the top 3. They were certainly playing well, but Indonesia just, you know, just denying them.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
You can speak for experience too. How about that loser bracket final between China and Indo?
That was pretty crazy, man. Getting into that already. I mean, to be fair, I think it's the best CWC match that we've ever seen. Maybe only topped by one, which I've already mentioned on stream back then, being Japan versus Sweden in 2014 in the finals week 1-2, I think. Yeah, it was finals week 1-2. It was actually the exact same scenario, so that was pretty cool. So we had that back then. You also had a tiebreaker, and it was a really bad tiebreaker, to be fair, because Catch in 2014 was way different from what we have now. It was a convert A10. It was badly mapped too, but it was really difficult, right, because of it being really bad too. So in that regard, it was really exciting, and the best parts about it, only one person passed the map, so it's kind of ironic to see.
Wow.
So, I mean, comparing that to what we had this year with Indo versus China, it was higher level of play. I have to admit that. This year had higher level of play, so in that regard, it was more exciting to watch this match opposed to that one. It was really cool to see how strong Indo was performing up until their 5th point. That's when they really started dropping off. But China had a great comeback too, and it was so much fun to watch and commentate, especially, right? I mean, you as a viewer, I'm not sure if you were there live, but how did you experience it? I mean, you were live. I mean, that was pretty hyped up, right?
Oh, it was indeed. It was really crazy. I was thinking that, you know, we're going to see Indonesia go back-to-back in grand finals, which would have been amazing for them. This time they would have gone against South Korea, but unfortunately they just couldn't get the job done. It was very exciting too to see a tiebreaker at this level of the World Cup.
Yeah.
With these kinds of teams in a World Cup that had been for the most part riddled with kind of blowouts, if you will, like 6-3, 6-2, 6-1, 6-0. We hadn't really seen a lot of matches that would come within 2 points when we got past the quarterfinals and the semis. There weren't really that many exciting matches.
I mean, after the round of 16,
was,
just to fill you up a little bit there,
yeah.
I mean, that was the last time we saw a tiebreaker in that tournament up until the very final week, well, second to final week of the tournament, finals week 1, right? Please continue. Sorry there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. But, you know, it just been a tournament where you could, it may not have gone as predicted, but they weren't really that close of matches. It wasn't really that intense as a viewer. You would just see it and be like, okay, well, that wasn't exciting. That match is over. But there were definitely definitely this World Cup had a lot of moments where it got the crowd hyped up, and there were definitely, I can account for 3 really awesome matches this World Cup. The Indochina one, obviously being the best one, was definitely, in my opinion, the highlight of the World Cup, no doubt about it. But then you had also the Netherlands-Chile match, round of 16. That was really hyped. And then I think one that a lot of people tend to forget about was Norway beating Germany in the group stage.
I mean,
Was pretty
they kind of try and bury that away, right? The Germans, they don't want that to be heard.
I mean, that is just like a highlight for me this entire World Cup. I think if you have to pick like a top 3, that's got to at least be number 3.
I guess
Norway.
In my experience, though, I mean, as you said, there were a lot of matches that came down to 6-1, 6-2, even full clean sweeps, even in the latter stages of the tournament. But I have to say there were some matches that got really close, even though the score difference was really big. And to give another example for that, we have the first match that Indo had versus China too, because they played twice in this tournament against each other. That was pretty fun. And in my experience, those were 2 of the most exciting matches that we had in the entirety of the tournament. They played China and then they lost, correct me if I'm wrong, 6-2 or 6-3. 6-3, I actually think. 6-2, could be.
It was one of those.
One of those 2 anyway, and I mean, it wasn't really close up until one of the very final moments of the match. China was leading 5-1, and I mean, the results prior to it being 5-1 were really close too. We had score differences of 5 to 20k. We even had one score difference in a map where you literally had 1k of difference between the 2 scores, right? It was all down to droplets and all down to spinners. So really, in that regard, that was really fun to watch too, and to me also very much exciting to commentate. I was there to be able to do it, luckily. That's something that we saw a lot in the later rounds too, but there were indeed some clean sweeps too. We had the USA versus Hong Kong, for example. I mean, Hong Kong wasn't really a match for the USA in that match. Looking back at the multiplayer, what's it called? The multiplayer room.
The MP link.
History, the MP link anyway, yeah, the history of that room. So yeah.
No, yeah, this World Cup also, like, it was really interesting because we did see a lot of, we saw several new players, if you will, into like the higher ranks, like such as you guys, the Netherlands and Mexico. We had some really interesting storylines developing. We saw Poland go out in the round of 16, or the first round of the losers bracket.
Yeah.
That was crazy. We saw Chile ride the losers bracket all the way to finals week, which is really difficult to do. We saw a win by default in the knockout stage of Germany over Argentina, which was kind of bizarre. So this World Cup really, I think, did deliver, and I think it was probably one of the more entertaining CWCs we've had in a while. But in the end, it was dominated by Asia on the podium.
That is true. That is very much true. But as you said, many storylines developing. There was lots of variation, and that's what I like. You kind of got a mixed bag of everything. At the end of the tournament, you had some clean sweeps. You had some, well, wins by default, which don't really tend to happen at World Cups at all. So that was pretty funny to see too. You had some very close matches, like the one we mentioned being Indonesia versus China. And, well, we got, I think, rightful owners on the podium place, rightful owners of being first, second, and third place, really, of this tournament. Even though all Asian teams, they worked so hard for it, they deserved it, really.
I have to agree there, definitely. But also, let's not forget that China's tactical planning. That, you know, we mentioned that with JBH in several podcasts before. It worked. I think it worked perfectly for them. Now, granted, they almost dropped the match to Indo. I'm sure they were getting a little nervous about that. But in the end, they were able to rally back, and I think they essentially got what they wanted out of it. I think their goal was mainly to see, let's see if we can put up a fight against South Korea in the grand final. They did lose the first game 7-3 against South Korea. They did the best they could, but I think in the end, that was just some brilliant tactical planning by China. We don't really see moves like that from teams in World Cups, not in like host World Cups. I haven't seen anything like that. So that was a huge topic when that happened. Yeah, we talked about it for several times on our podcast, and here we are again talking about it. And it worked out so brilliantly for the Chinese. They got themselves to a silver medal.
I mean, we all assumed that China would get at least one of the top 3 places, right? But the way they approached that second place that they got was very interesting indeed, and it worked out perfectly fine. What they did, for the people that don't remember, they deliberately lost in the group stage versus Australia to be bracketed differently into the round of 16, so that they wouldn't have to.
Austria.
You're very much correct, but Australia, yeah. Austria.
I think it was Austria.
Shit, I did it.
Yeah.
No, I tried to prevent me from doing that.
Hey, how about that for Austria? Their first World Cup back since the 2015 World Cup, and they get a win over China, 4-0.
They won against the second places of the tournament, so hey.
Yeah. So hey, maybe they gotta be at least a low seed next year.
Hashtag potential.
Hashtag go Austria.
But yeah, I mean, it worked out so well. They got to play South Korea in the very last round of the winners bracket, and then they lost against them. But up until that point, I mean, they prevented everything bad from happening, right? Even against Indonesia,
yeah,
it was kind of straightforward, just a win for them, even though their performance hampered a little bit towards the end. They already had such a big advantage in score over the Indonesian team. There was no way for them to really lose that match anymore, right? Unless they really, really fucked up. Yeah. But that didn't happen. So really well planned by the Chinese team, and that really got them to second place too. I mean, it was kind of assumable, it was kind of predictable for them to play against Indonesia for third place too. Most people would have predicted it, I think. I did predict it, but they got to it pretty safely too.
For the USA to, I think several people may have predicted that the USA could have been up there in the loser bracket final, and they well could have, but no, I definitely agree with that. But the funny thing about all of this is we only assume this is tactical planning. We have no idea if that's actually what they meant to do or if they just didn't show up.
I mean, as far as I know, that wasn't the plan, but I haven't really asked them directly. You might, you know.
We need to get somebody in on a podcast for that.
I'll ask Nagy or someone from the Chinese team to ask him about it. They're offline now because of the time.
I can't wait for them to just come in and be like, no, yeah, we all just overslept or some bullshit like that. Poland be like, are you fucking serious?
I mean,
they overslept.
That would even piss him off more, man. But yeah, sad Poland. I mean, Poland didn't get it too far into the tournament, and that was also due to this event from happening.
The savage Mexican team. Mexico put up a stellar performance this year. I like to highlight teams like that have like a absolutely standout performance that we just don't normally see. Like for you guys, Netherlands and Mexico, two teams that like normally we don't see them that far up in the rankings, but both teams were on the door, knocking on the door of finals week, which is a really big deal. Top 8 in the world, that's massive. And although they are high-seeded teams and we're supposed to expect of them, we just haven't seen it from them. So it's interesting to see, and I'm glad we see that, and hopefully we'll see them up in the ranks next year.
I mean, in the finals weeks, we had, I think, 5 top-seeded teams and 3 high-seeded teams, or at least not the finals week, but the top 8 of the tournament. That being China, South Korea, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Chile, the Netherlands, Mexico, and the USA, right? So looking at it, we have Mexico, Hong Kong, and the Netherlands from the high seed, and then the rest is from top seed. So ironically, all those high seeded teams got kicked out like right as the opportunity came up. So that's pretty sad to see. There was no real high seeded team that got very far into the tournament. Top seed dominated the top 4, so I mean that was a very good and prevailing performance from them.
Low seeds though. Action from low-seeded teams this tournament also, which is really impressive. We saw like Argentina winning their group. Now, last year they were a top-seeded team. It was still crazy to see them fall down to a low seed, but they just win their group. And the group was not that not an easy group to win. They had Romania, who had been playing very well. They had France, who unfortunately just had a meltdown in their group. So it was a
get your internet fixed, man. You were understandable, right? But you were kind of laggy there. God damn it.
Oh, really?
God damn it, man. But yeah, I mean...
I just got like so it probably affected my internet.
Uh-oh.
I just said with text, I was like, hey.
Shit. I mean...
Video editing.
Yeah, back to the video. Go! I mean, compared to previous year, though, about the low-seeded teams we were talking about, there was one big difference this year compared to last year, and that is that last year Indonesia was actually the low-seeded, and they made it to second place, right? That didn't happen this year. I mean, those kind of miracles were not there today, not this year anyway.
True.
Top
True,
4 was
definitely.
top seed. You had Hong Kong that made it to top 6, and you had Chile that made it to top 6. So really, Hong Kong was the only high-seeded team that really made it very far into the tournament and made it
Yeah,
to
and
final
let's
three.
not forget Sweden too. Let's not forget Sweden was there as well. They earned their way into knockout stages off the upset win over Russia, and made it to the winners bracket quarterfinal. And now, granted, they played against the UK, who unfortunately had some issues with their roster and some players weren't there and stuff. But they still made it to a winners bracket quarterfinal, which is very impressive. And they didn't lose the first round of. They were part of the 9-12 group, I believe, finishing in 9th to 12th place, which is still very respectable for Sweden.
Yeah, it could be. And that's the time we went on holiday. Feels bad.
Yeah.
Too bad. Too bad.
Yep.
I mean, maybe they could have pulled up a little bit further ahead of the other teams, but I don't think that Sweden would have made it to top 8 in the end, regardless.
No, but I definitely feel like they were also part of the beneficiary of China's tactical planning, if you remember, because they were the team that swapped places. Or it was them or the UK that it was South Korea or China. My bad. China would have been playing Sweden if they had won their group. So Sweden was also definitely a beneficiary of that, and getting a win in the knockout stages puts you a step further in the rankings. So again, that kind of elevated Sweden from that 9-12 out of the 13-16 into the 9-12, which is still very relevant.
Yeah, it's still very
So
good.
there's just more of a right place, right time kind of scenario.
I mean, really, for this year, I can't really think of any team that performed, well, I don't want to say disappointingly, but not up to the expectations that the most people had prior to the tournament, except for maybe Poland. Poland kind of fell flat on their faces in the round of 16, and that was pretty sad and weird to see, to be fair. I thought that their roster was very solid, but against Mexico, seemingly, they just didn't really make a chance.
Yeah, that's going to happen every year. You know, you have people doing well. There has to be people who do worse. It's just the name of the game. But it was definitely unexpected to see. We were definitely thought Poland would have made it farther, and potentially we thought they would rival Chile maybe for a spot in finals week. Potentially. You know, they're just that good, and so it was really shocking to see them go out. But Mexico just came to play, and it was really unexpected because Mexico had just come off of a 5-0 loss to Japan, so they didn't exactly have momentum on their side, and they just pulled off a 5-1 win out of nowhere against Poland. It was absolutely shocking and definitely kind of weird to see. Another team that kind of really, I don't think, performed up to their standards was Taiwan, in my opinion.
Taiwan.
I mean, their losses were understandable to the teams they played against, but it doesn't seem right for Taiwan to finish in a place like into the 9th to 12th place. You normally see them up a little higher, maybe in 7-8, or maybe 5-6. This is somewhere around there, because they're a very good team. They just tend to lay low and fly under the radar. But they unfortunately beat Argentina and then lost to the USA in the quarterfinal, and then lost to Chile. But again, Chile just went on an absolutely savage run through the loser bracket. They couldn't be stopped. It was just unfortunate. For
Chile
like
did well in the loser bracket. After the loss against us, the Dutchies, they started performing good, like way better compared to what they did the week before that. So props to Chile. But yeah, you're right in a way. Taiwan did in a way underperform. They were also missing out on their very best player being Ewik, so I guess that also hampered the performance a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they could have made it further. The thing is, they only really got up to speed in the last few rounds of the tournament. Like before that, they just weren't really playing on their level, and they could have done way better. Didn't happen, sadly. But in the end, they did show off some really good performance against the teams they played in the last few matches. And that left an impression to me too. So I'm not gonna say Taiwan is a bad country still, right? For next year, I'm still gonna count them in to be a good team anyway, right?
Yeah. We just had a lot of countries get upset by teams who were just having a good year. Nothing to knock about. Poland is a great team, but Mexico, we didn't expect them to do that well. They just had a really good year this year in terms of performance. And again, I feel like another country that
Mexico really can perform that well consistently. It's just that, again, in the first few rounds, they just didn't really do it that well. Their players that they had this year, their roster anyway, was better than previous year, and they didn't really get further than previous year, which was sad to see. But at the same time, level from all other teams also raised in this tournament, like quite a fuck ton, honestly. So maybe they were lagging behind a little bit, but still, it's unexpected to somebody like me who's experienced Mexico in the prime time, right?
Right. No, yeah, definitely. And, you know, we go back to Taiwan and their situation. Another country that suffered the exact same fate this year was Japan, who we look at their roster, very strong. JBH mentioned, he said he thinks this is one of the best Japanese rosters we've seen in CWC ever.
That was me.
And they beat, yeah. I think we both agreed to that too, and we also stated that they were a very strong roster. Yet they beat Mexico 5-0, round of 16. They win against Mexico, and then Hong Kong out of nowhere. And Hong Kong's not a bad team. And I don't think anybody was ready or prepared to deal with Alice Cartlet, who just had an absolutely sensational tournament performance, essentially almost pretty much carrying his team. Not a complete carry. I mean, the Hong Kong team is good, decent, but Alice Cartlet was playing above and beyond expectations, which definitely aided in wins over Japan and the Netherlands. And again, those two countries were having fantastic years. This is the best the Netherlands has done CWC as far as ever, yes. And, you know, Japan just had a strong team this year. So it was crazy to see Hong Kong go on a savage run like that. They beat the UK. You know, they had to play South Korea their first round. That's kind of demoralizing, having to play South Korea. Then they beat UK, gained a little confidence, then had to face Japan. And then just back-to-back Japan-Netherlands. They were able to do it and claim a spot in finals week. So, again, I still think it's not a story of Japan being bad or Taiwan being bad. It's just these other countries just picked up their pace, and I feel like that's what we saw this year. It's not that not that many countries got worse. The overall level of competition is rising. Other teams are rising up to compete, and we did kind of see that in semifinals week. We really saw it.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna agree with you there. But yeah, Hong Kong too, as you already mentioned, I think we all just underestimated them. Like, the thing is, we were almost certain that we would play against Japan, the Netherlands, after our match against Germany, but then Hong Kong pretty easily took that win from Japan. It is a pattern for some reason. It's like a repeated pattern that Japan always tends to have really good teams, but then loses in the CWC. Seemingly that always happens, but still, at the same time, I mean, Japan can definitely win against most teams that are playing in CWC. So playing against Hong Kong, we all expected them to win too, because Hong Kong's performance that far into the tournament wasn't that good yet, right? They really started to catch up and really started to be on fire around the era where they were playing against Japan and playing against us, the Netherlands, right? So they won against Japan 6-2, and then they played us, right? At the start of the match, they weren't really that on fire. We were having some close points, and they were having some close points too. We almost had a few break points too, but those last 3 maps that we played, they just dominated on, pretty much taking that win. Alice Cartlet indeed being the MVP in my opinion too. I mean, all of Hong Kong did great up until that stage, except for, and not to flame him by any means, Latifasama had some very hampering performance in the previous rounds, especially against South Korea, that made Hong Kong lose a few points. He tended to have a lot of 1 misses in the tournament, which kind of became a meme after a while. But in that match against Japan and in that match against us, and from there on henceforth, he was playing well. And he was playing on his level, finally. So Hong Kong underestimated by so many people, and that made him top 6 in the end. Losing against the USA, but I mean, USA had a great day on their match too.
The US definitely had a great performance this World Cup, and I think this ties, if not is the best that they've ever performed in the CWC. I don't think the United States has ever finished in the podium in terms of CWC. No.
Never.
So this was a definite good year for them, and I know that's got to be heartbreaking for them to come so close to the podium but not get it. But it's definitely a good year for the United States, and that's something else I want to talk about is how do we look towards next year? What do you think we're going to be seeing next year? Because we know seedings are going to change. Certain countries such as Hong Kong have risen up to a new level, and definitely a low seed is not worthy of Hong Kong status. Definitely going to rise up. You yourselves, the Netherlands, have played very well. There's potential there maybe to go from high seed or top seed or remain high seed. And then we've had countries that have had just unfortunate years. We see Germany, unfortunately, just had a meltdown, had a really bad year. And we see countries like Argentina who just didn't have that great of a year. How do you think it's going to affect the seedings?
Seedings really don't get affected by tournament performance, right? They all get affected by PP, so in that regard, not really at all. But as in performance from all teams, I really can't tell at this moment because the performances this year, to be fair, were really close. Teams were up on level, and compared to previous year, for example, you could really tell which teams were the best, which teams were going to make it to top 8, and who would fall down flat in their faces before that would happen, right? This year, we didn't really have that opportunity just because everybody was on a very high level. And you couldn't really make a good distinction between the good and the bad because everybody was really good after the group stage, right? The 16 teams we have left, except for some few outsiders, I guess, a few outsider teams that weren't really performing that well after the group stage, like Sweden, for example, due to the loss of Satomi. Most teams after the round of 16 were performing really, really well, leading to it being very hard to predict matches from that point on. But to be fair, for next year, I just expect an increase of difficulty for every single team to get further into the tournament because some teams are going to improve in their roster too. Other teams are just going to improve in their player skill and just going to keep the same roster. And to be fair, as for next year, I predict again for South Korea and China to stay those top dogs, the two top dog teams, as they've always been. But then from third place forward, I really can't tell. USA is going to have a good shot at it. Indonesia is going to have a good shot at it again. I mean, they've shown twice in a row now that they are able of taking up a podium place, so that's really good for them. And I mean, there's
and
plenty
I definitely think
of
we're going to see a change in seeding for Indonesia potentially. I mean, Indonesia's played absolutely stellar. As you said, they were low seed, but they got the silver, and they got that bump up to the top seed, and they've made it to the podium again. We'll see if they can go for the three-peat to tie Germany.
It's going to be really cool because I think Germany is going to have a better team next year too. There might be some old returning players for Germany to come into that roster, and that's definitely going to benefit them a lot. So Germany is going to be interesting to see too. I mean, their performance was kind of lacking this year, sadly. We could especially notice in our match against Germany. It was pretty sad. But yeah, for next year, it's going to be really cool. I think a lot of teams that haven't played that well this year will also be learning from their mistakes, like Poland, for example. I'm not saying it's a mistake for them to have played this bad, but at the same time, they should have done better. And I mean, they are very much able to admit it themselves too, that they should have just become at least top 8 or so. At least with their kind of aspiration towards the tournament, right? Their kind of look on it. So yeah, next year I think this competition is really shaping up to be the most interesting one of the entire OC community, right? Because you have Taiko and you have Mania, where you really have just this one set team to always win the tournament. And even though CWC also knows South Korea and we have them who seem to be unbeatable, they actually lose points to other teams. So that's the difference from, for example, TWC2, where you have Japan literally losing 1 point for the entire tournament on the semi-last map of their tournament, right? So that in that regard, it's different, and I think it's also more competitive compared to OSU Standard, since we've seen twice in a row now that in OSU Standard, America took first place, you had China take second place, and then you had third place. I think this year was South Korea, if I'm not incorrect on that. Could be very much incorrect.
I don't know. Wiki on that, but
you could check.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think this is probably was probably one of the greatest CWCs or World Cups in general we've seen in terms of competition. Like you mentioned earlier, it was really hard to predict matches. Again, when we were sitting down looking at the round of 16, I predicted 3 potential upsets. Only one of them happened. One of them did happen, though. That's the crazy thing. You know, you never know what's going to happen with CWC, and now when we see the competition level rising, it only means it's going to get better and better and more competitive for CWC 2018. And you know, when we have a World Cup that had so many storylines such as this one did, it really just makes the next one that much more anticipated. Like again, Romania, we didn't talk about them that much. They didn't do well in the round of 16, but their first ever World Cup in any game mode in OS, and they did make it through to the knockout stages. That's pretty commendable.
Yeah, that's very much commendable, as you said. So for all people that might not be around for next year in OSU, stay around for at least CWC 2018. We can promise you of already that it's going to be very cool. I do suspect there to be even better competition than this year. It's really starting.
Again, also.
Sorry?
Oh, my bad. You can finish up. My bad.
No, you can finish up. I'm a
Okay,
gent.
what I was gonna say what I was gonna say is also we saw several teams not make it through to this round of 16. You look at these countries, there are a few missing that didn't make it, that got upset in the group stage. You know, France didn't make it through. Russia got upset by Sweden. You know, so there are several countries that are going to be gunning for a spot in the knockout stages. We see Brazil didn't make it through. You know, a lot of countries that just we normally are used to seeing. The competition level's just risen to a point where you have to be up there or you're not getting there. And I think that a lot of countries realize that now. So I'm really excited to see the competition for the group stage. It's going to be on from the very get-go next year.
Yeah, definitely. Those teams that now made those mistakes are going to have learned from those mistakes, and they'll be up and ready next year. So, I mean, that kind of sums it all up for what we can expect in CWC 28. It's some fucking crazy competition anyway, so stay tuned for that, guys. It's going to be very cool. But
indeed.
Sorry?
I was just saying indeed.
Indeed.
Alrighty.
Well,
real quick before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
What was your favorite moment of the CWC this year?
Favorite moment of CWC this year?
I think I can guess it, but
really? Well, I'm gonna categorize it in 3 different categories, right? I'm gonna say, as for my own matches, I'm gonna say my match against Chile was really cool. Maybe tied up with my match against Hong Kong, that was really cool too. I loved playing those 2 matches. Secondly, I loved commentating the match of China versus Indonesia. That was really fucking cool too. And just commentating in general was really cool. Up until the grand final, I got to be the commentator for the grand final along JB Hyperion too. So that was really heartwarming to me, to be appreciated in that kind of regard, to have your commentating skills being recognized like that. I mean, I kind of see it as a feat. Maybe that's going to a little bit too far, but I'm gonna view it myself as a feat. And then as for the most exciting match, I'm definitely gonna give that one to Indonesia versus China. That was so crazy. I'm probably not gonna forget that match at all, ever. That's gonna stick around.
I don't think
for a
many
long
people
time.
will. Definitely think a lot of people will be talking about that in the community. Unfortunately, you know, we probably will forget about Norway beating Germany, which was an awesome match. Gotta give it one last hype up there. But that's just the crazy stuff we're seeing now in CWC, where we're seeing all these little upsets happen. They don't really happen that much in other game modes. And normally, in general, in most World Cups and we haven't seen that. But this year was really diverse. And again, as you said, we couldn't predict anything. So we had a lot of awesome and spectacular moments. But ultimately, in the end, South Korea doing what they do best, taking it, running it back all the way to the grand final, and winning it. They knocked off China twice in a row, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
congratulations to South Korea. They did great.
They did not drop a point until they played the USA in the semifinals, which when we got to the semifinals, those are the teams that end up finishing 1st through 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's very hard to only drop 5 points when you play USA and then China. They only drop 5, I think.
Yeah, in
Combined
total they
between
dropped
those
8 in the
8,
entire
yeah.
tournament. They dropped
Entire tournament.
6 versus China in both matches, so that was 14 points gained, no, 13 by them, and 6 points for China. And against the US, they lost 2 points too.
Yeah.
In like one of the very latest stages of the tournament too. I mean, those were the 2 final stages, really. The only 2 stages where they lost points.
Definitely, but South Korea are going to have to be on guard because next year they will have a lot of competition and it will not be easy to do what they did.
I mean, this year they already have quite some competition coming from China, to be
Oh,
fair.
yeah.
Compared to what we saw in CWC 2015 for one, or maybe 2014, South Korea was dominating. You couldn't win against them pretty much. That was the definition of South Korea back in the day. You just couldn't beat them. It was kind of like Japan in the TWC. There was no way of you beating them. But this time round, there were teams that scraped off a few points. Some of them even coming close towards maybe pushing them into a tiebreaker. I mean, China was kind of close. You gotta admit it. Even though they only had half the points that South Korea got in their own respective matches, they still got pretty close to some very nerve-wracking moments too. I mean, they could have pulled off a tiebreaker. Was it enough for them? Maybe underperforming here and there, right? So again, South Korea as having some competition from here on. They can't really just sit back and enjoy the badges for another year or two, right? They just have to work for it this time around. And that's very cool to see.
But hey, they did get the badges.
They did get the badges.
got the badges.
Got him. But Indonesia and China too. Congratulations to those two teams. I mean, Indonesia taking it twice in a row. In CWC 2016, they came in second. Now they come in third. With the returning.
You know what
South
that means
Korea.
now?
First.
That means that they're going for the gold next year.
They should be going for gold, man. I mean, I'm not expecting anything less from them. And China too.
No, definitely.
China is definitely happy that they got gold already once in 16. I was. Oh, no, it's actually. Oh, it's 2017 this year. I almost forgot that it was 2017. In 2016, they actually obtained gold already. And now they obtained silver, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to obtain gold anymore from this point on. So that's going to be cool to see, cool to view. And there's definitely going to be teams other than those three giants and those three behemoths to also want to finally reach a podium place like the USA. Maybe Hong Kong does want to give it a shot next year. Maybe they are going to be training. Chile, who knows, right? I mean, Chile got it in 2013 in the very first World Cup of the Osaka Championships series. So, I mean, who knows? There's lots incoming for next year. There's so much incoming. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Really excited.
Well, then, I guess we can wrap it up then. That was really just a very clunky, messy summary of what happened this CWC after round of 16. Not group stage, round of 16, yeah. Because we did have 2 podcasts prior to this one. One with JBH about the group stage, and then we were talking about the round of 16 afterwards. But yeah, that is CWC 2017 in a nutshell.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So again, what was your favorite moment? Like, we didn't ask you. You only asked me about my favorite moment.
Yes,
what was your favorite moment?
My favoritist moment of the whole tournament. Well, it's really hard to pick because we had so many good ones this year. But I think my favorite moment was the Chile-Netherlands match because I predicted an upset and got it right. I was really hyped about that. I was like, dang, none of my upsets are happening. I'm stupid. And then you guys won. I was like, yes, I got one.
Only time.
hey, I like anything with a tiebreaker. If there's a tiebreaker involved, it's gonna be good.
I mean, that's cool too. I mean, that's very much respectable. I mean, we weren't even guessing that we would win against Indonesia that day. Oh, not Indonesia. I mean Chile. Sorry, my apologies.
I was like, as a matter of fact, you didn't win against Indonesia.
Don't rub it in. Don't. But yeah, we did not expect it ourselves too. So you expecting it and actually getting it right.
Yeah. Well,
Bravo.
I figured it was just one of the most probable upsets to happen. You know, you always gotta look for that now. With CWC, you have to look at that now because it can happen.
Can happen anyway. Yep.
It can. Well, I guess that's all we're gonna do.
Yeah, I think so.
We're gonna wrap this up. Cue the jazzy outro music.
There's no jazzy outro music. Jazz is everywhere in this video.
Insert more jazzy outro music.
Why do you do that every single time with the outro, dude?
Because you have to do it.
You're killing our community.
What community? Yeah, 40 subscribers.
We'll get there, mate. But alrighty, hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely check us out on the social media, link down below. Want to thank you, Dolan, for being here too, to cover together with me. We're going to be updating the site soon to the Custom Alosu site. We're going to be giving updates finally, right?
Right.
So, yeah,
maybe.
Anything else for you to say?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Don't forget to buy your fidget spinners.
Yeah, I'm not gonna cut it out, but I would love to. I mean, god damn it, you're giving me more work. Anyway, subscribe to the channel, please.
Hey.
Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next video. We'll be around for the Custom Alosu website, and when MWC 4-key will be up, we'll be trying to cover as much as we possibly can. I'll be having more free time, logically, since I'm not playing and I'm not commentating for the tournament itself, so that's going to be pretty lit too. Hey guys, have a good evening, have a good day wherever you live, and we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.
Don't drop your fruit.